So in this presentation, we're going to be looking at glial cells in both the central and peripheral nervous system. And then we'll also look at some of the different neuron types based on functional as well as structural classifications. And we're going to start with our glial cells of the central nervous system. So the first one we want to look at is the astrocytes. These are star-shaped. Astro means star, cytes is cells, so star-shaped cells. Most abundant glial cells in the central nervous system. They provide structural support, regulate the extracellular environment, maintain the blood-brain barrier, and assist in nutrient transport to neurons, because we got to keep our neurons well fed and alive. Next, we have our oligodendrocytes. Oligodendrocytes produce myelin sheaths around the central nervous system axons. I always think of the myelin sheath as like that covering that you see on wires, and it performs basically the same purpose. They insulate nerve fibers and accelerate the electrical impulse conduction, which is crucial for efficient neural communication. And then we have two more, our microglia and our ependymal cells. So the microglia acts as the central nervous system's immune cells by identifying and engulfing pathogens and debris. So these are phagocytotic cells, they're the gobblers. Ependymal cells are going to line the brain's ventricles, helping regulate cerebrospinal fluid and forming a barrier between compartments. That cerebrospinal fluid is really important. It provides a nice cushion for our brain and spinal cord to keep them from being damaged, of course. So then we have glial cells for the peripheral nervous system. And so our first one we're looking at is known as a Schwann cell. Schwann cells myelinate the peripheral nervous system axons. So same thing as what we were talking about with the oligodendrocytes, but these are for peripheral nervous system. So facilitating rapid signal transmission. They also play a key role in nerve regeneration by guiding axon regrowth after injury. And remember that nerve cells can, to a certain extent, regenerate. Obviously, the more severe the damage, the harder it is to repair. But basic, simple damage is often and more easily repaired. So that's a kind of a misconception when people talk about, well, if you damage nerves, they'll never regrow and they'll never repair. That's not exactly true, but the worse the damage is, the more likely that you'll run into a situation where they cannot repair, based on what we know at this time, of course. Next, we have the satellite cells. Satellite cells surround the neuron cell bodies within peripheral ganglia. They're providing structural support, regulating the microenvironment, facilitating nutrient exchange. So these are basically, I kind of think of them as like little nurse cells. They're going to make sure that everything is well taken care of and provide us with the things that we need to be successful. Okay, then, so those are like all of our support staff, our support cells. Next, we want to focus on the neurons, which these are the functional cells of the nervous system. These are the ones that are actually going to transmit impulses. And remember, we have sensory going from the stimulus in. We have the interneurons that are in the brain where we're processing, and then we have motor where we're sending out. Remember, we talked about that in terms of the functionality of the nervous system. So, sensory are known as afferent neurons, and they carry information from sensory receptors, hence the pins, towards the central nervous system, enabling the perception of external and internal environmental changes. Our motor or efferent, I always remember efferent exiting, afferents arriving, so these are exiting the brain. The other ones were arriving to the brain. So motor or efferent neurons transmit signals from the central nervous system to muscles or glands, eliciting responses such as movement or secretion. So this is all about getting those signals out to make something happen. Our interneurons connect our sensory and motor neurons within the central nervous system and therefore are vital for reflexes, neural circuits, complex processes. This is where we're talking about where we're doing these processing and making sure the signals are getting from where they need to be and where they need to go. We also can classify our neurons based on their physical structure, and in particular with the number or arrangement of what we call the processes. These are the pieces that come off. So we have our multipolar neurons. They typically have one axon and multiple dendrites. These are the most common neuron types in the central nervous system, involved in motor control and integration. And these are the ones that when you do, and we learn about, and you look at your notes, what's considered the standard neuron, this is what we're talking about typically is the multipolar neurons. Bipolar neurons will have one axon and one dendrite, so there's basically one piece hanging off and one piece hanging off. And these are typically found in sensory organs like the retina, olfactory system that are very specialized for sensory transmission. Because they're so specialized, we only need the single pathway in and out. Our unipolar neurons will have a single process that branches in two. These are typically sensory neurons in the peripheral nervous system, particularly the dorsal root ganglia.